So it's now my pleasure to invite Katie Kirkpatrick to the podium to introduce our speaker.
Good afternoon. Thank you, Keith. I have the honor and privilege, just like President Kathy mentioned, of being the proud president and CEO of the Metro Atlanta Chamber and having the opportunity to work with Ryan Marshall, our guest today, as our 2025 chair. And I hope that he took that position with gusto instead of arm twisting. But I am happy here today to lead a conversation with Ryan. But before I do that, and before he makes remarks to all of you, I'd like to introduce Ryan. But thanks first to Keith Parker and the entire team for the invitation to be part of this conversation today. And I'm also very thrilled to be having what I believe is one of the most important conversations in our community today, which is how do we build a better future through housing in our community. Ryan Marshall is the president and CEO of Pulte Group, one of the nation's largest and most geographically diverse home builders. Pulte Group operates in 26 states under a family of trusted brands: Pulte Homes, Syntex, Del Webb, Devasta, and John Whelan Homes and Neighborhoods. And I'm pleased to say that John Whelan has joined us today and is sitting here at table one. Obviously, a longtime community and leader here for us. So we're very thankful to have you here today. Before Ryan's career, before becoming CEO in 2016, he held every major leadership role at Pulte, from division president in South Florida and Orlando, to area president for Florida and the Southeast, to EVP of home building operations. He's overseen everything from land acquisition and financial reporting to strategic market analysis and consumer strategy. Ryan earned his accounting degree from the University of Utah and his MBA from Arizona State University. Under his leadership, Pulte Group continues to invest in innovation, workforce development, and most importantly, housing solutions that reflect the evolving needs of the American family. He currently serves as our 2025 board chair for the Metro Atlanta Chamber, which has been really insightful for us as we think about economic development and where those jobs need to lay their head every night when they come home. He is a thoughtful strategist, a community-minded executive, and someone who understands that building homes is ultimately about building lives and community. So please join me in welcoming Ryan Marshall.
Good afternoon. It's good to be with all of you. It's fun to be here in the room and see so many friendly faces, and I don't think I ran into any unfriendly faces yet, so we'll see if we can keep it that way. Kathy, thank you for the invitation, and y'all are lucky to have such a wonderful person and executive leading Rotary. I did have the good fortune of meeting Kathy for the first time in 2020. Or maybe 2021, 22, time flies, and we had a wonderful conversation, and I don't think I had to twist her arm too bad, but Kathy's not only is doing a wonderful job leading Atlanta Committee for Progress, but she has become one of my dearest friends, so thank you, Kathy. I also see that I was strategically placed between two really important people in this community. John Whelan, one of the greatest home builders that this town has ever seen. It was wonderful to share a meal with you. And despite what you all might think, that I was strategically placed next to Raphael to negotiate for lower interest rates, I did not do that. And I actually make a bit of a case why I'm not necessarily sure that lower interest rates are the magic elixir that everybody's looking for as it relates to housing. So anyway, I'll jump in. I've got a few slides, and then I think Katie and I are going to have a little bit of a chat. In terms of kind of 5 topics that I want to touch on today: affordability, home shortage, consumer sentiment, the resale market, and you may have heard recently there's been some discussion about an emergency housing agenda proposal that's coming out of Washington, D.C. It's changing frequently, but I'll at least give you some of the high points of what's in the current proposal. So let me start with everything has gotten more expensive, literally everything. So this is relative to 2020. You can see that household or shelter is up, but not nearly as much as some of the other necessities that we all need in life. You can see that relative to incomes, which are up 109%, but the only thing that it's kept pace with is food and services. Let me now move into kind of pricing of homes in Atlanta, and you can see that things are up significantly from where we were at in 2020. The 7 or 8 years leading into 2020-21, we kind of traded sideways. There was, 3 to 4% modest increases. And then 2020 to 2024, we saw a 46% increase. So just staggering numbers in terms of what's happened with prices post-COVID. This is just the old news. You probably see this, but you can see where interest rates are at today. And in fact, if I put September's numbers on there, we'd be down about another 40 basis points. 30-year fixed rate mortgage today is probably right around 6.25. That's if you go out into, you go to your local mortgage banker and you get the rack rate, if you will. Most of the new home builders, our incentive of choice has been the interest rate buy down. So builders of our size, we've got our own mortgage company. We can get into the capital markets quite efficiently, and we are able to get those rates down as our primary incentive that we're offering. 30-year fixed rate mortgages as low as 4.99. If you're inclined to take a 7.6 ARM, which I personally think is the best mortgage product out there, we can get that down as low as 3.99%. So interest rates doesn't have to be the impediment. And I'll come back and touch on just a few other things here in a second. You may have heard that, hey, the market's not great. The housing market's not great. Inventories are up. Things aren't moving. I would tell you it's not totally true. It's not the greatest housing market that we've ever seen, but it's far from the worst housing market that this country's seen. This certainly will not be our company, a record year for our company, but it'll probably be the 4th or 5th best year that our company's ever had. So it's it's an okay market. The entry level price point is the one that's particularly probably the struggling the most. And it's because the buyer groups that are trying to buy their first home, they've got jobs, but they don't necessarily have a ton of savings. They don't have the benefit of home equity from prior ownership. And so that's where we're seeing inventory levels rise the most, and we're also seeing the change in sales the most as well. You're also starting to see more price adjustments in that lower price point as well as builders and sellers look to find market. This is just to simply say that, and this is Atlanta versus the national population growth, we continue to have really strong in-migration to this city. You all live here, work here. You know what a great place Atlanta is, and certainly the numbers there would support that. And Katie kind of touched on it a little bit, this is one of the big stories that I think we're not talking about enough as it relates to housing in not just Atlanta, but the entire United States. We're simply not creating enough homes for the number of jobs that we're creating. This chart, the way it's basically set up is anything that's in the teal colored. Those are the number of homes that needed to be built relative to the number of jobs that were created. So there's a lot of years where you just see blue bars. Those are the years that essentially the homes that were built kept up with the number of jobs that were created. But we got a lot of years, 15, 16, 17, 21, 22, 23. We're running a deficit, and that's against structural deficits that were in existence well before 2015. The good news is that no matter the political spectrum that you're in, there's conversations about housing, which is a positive thing. Just a couple of weeks ago, Elizabeth Warren, Laura Ingraham, and Tucker Carlson I'm not sure that you could have a more polarizing group of people, but they were all speaking about the need for more housing. So I think there is some good energy around the fact that we need to solve the housing situation that we're in. In political circles, most politicians talk about growing the economy, creating more jobs, more high-paying jobs, et cetera. There's never the follow-on conversation about where those new jobs are going to go and sleep at night. And so until we balance the books effectively for every new job that we're creating an equal number of new homes. We're going to continue to have an affordability challenge. As I was chatting with Raphael about lowering interest rates, I said, it'll be a temporary fix. You would certainly get a little bit of euphoria. You'd see an uptick in consumer confidence, which I have here on this next chart. The single biggest thing that would benefit our business is an uptick in consumer confidence. When you're making the single biggest purchase of your life, if you're not confident about the future, you're going to be less likely to make that decision. I think a lower interest rate environment would probably help some of the consumer confidence challenges. It's not going to solve the affordability dilemma because we have a supply shortage. And simple supply and demand economics tell you that if interest rates go down and we're still in a tight supply environment, prices are just going to go up. And over the very short term, the overall affordability index will be unchanged because the sellers are simply going to just raise their prices. Resale market conditions in Atlanta, they're not bad. They're a little higher than maybe what they've been in the last 4 or 5 years, but we're still sitting at an estimated 4.3 months of supply. Normal months of supply in the resale market is 6. So, if you're in the market to buy a home, they're out there, but we're by no means oversupplied. Last slide that I'll touch on is just the White House's proposal. This is the list of things that they said that they'd like to see changed. All of these things will help. I don't think any of these things are the silver bullet. I think the silver bullet is the federal government and state governments need to create a little bit of a carrot and a little bit of a stick paradigm with all of the funds that come from the federal government in Washington to the state and ultimately down to local municipalities. Some of the carrot side of things could be if you want this bucket of appropriations, you need to build more water plants, more sewer plants, more schools, more fire stations, the type of infrastructure that our country needs in order to support more people. So that could certainly be some of the incentive side. There are all kinds of things that I think could be done on the stick side, which is as you're creating more jobs and you're giving out tax incentives and whatnot to incentivize those jobs. If you're doing that, you need to make sure that you're creating enough new homes to go with those new jobs. So the positive side of things, these are all good. If we could get all of these implemented, I think it'd be great. But until we start having the conversation about balancing the books on jobs created with homes needed, I think we'll continue to have a housing supply challenge. Okay.
Thank you, Ryan. You all just got a deep dive into the housing market if you weren't already there. And it is quite simply a supply and demand issue. So in order to increase the supply, we've got to remove some obstacles. And I actually want to start first, but I do want to get into the small home builder in a moment because I know 2020 and then the recession in 2008 also kind of took a lot of builders out of the economy. But before we get there, Ryan, Pulte Group actually moved here, relocated their headquarters about 9-10 years ago, if I'm right. 11 years ago from Detroit, Michigan. So maybe express to this group why that decision was made, and let's have an Atlanta, why Atlanta is awesome conversation for a moment. But there was a decision.
Yeah, so let me start by saying I had nothing to do with the decision, so I'm not going to take any credit or blame. I was living in South Florida at the time with the company, and when the company made the decision to relocate here, there were a number of cities that were considered, including Katie's favorite, and ultimately the leadership of our company settled on Atlanta. The really 3 driving reasons. One, very pro-business, pro-growth mindset in the region. 2, the airport, so having our corporate office here and the ability to get east to west, north to south. we probably sometimes maybe take for granted just how big of an asset our airport and our friends at Delta are. And then third, we've got a heavy concentration of our business in the Southeast and in Florida. And it was a great spot. The last one that wasn't in my list, but I'll add it. And I did live in Detroit at one point in time earlier in my career. It's actually not a bad place. It was a nice place to raise a family, and there were lovely people. But anytime that we went to recruit talent, sometimes it was a tough sell to convince somebody that was living in Dallas or Charlotte to move to Detroit. It just, it's got a little bit of it's maybe not as appealing as saying, hey, what do you think about moving to Atlanta? Now, you still got to get somebody to move, which is hard, but those are some of the big reasons that we chose to be here. It's been a wonderful place. My wife and I and our family, we've raised our kids here for 11 years. We're now officially empty nesters, so now I feel like I'm going to really get to see what Atlanta's all about. And it's just been a really, really nice place. And a lot of it is because of organizations like this, the Chamber, Atlanta Committee for Progress. I've never been in a place in my entire business career that is so civic-minded, the camaraderie, just the fellowship that exists in Atlanta is something unique and special.
Okay, I had to get the commercial out of the way. But it is sometimes a good reminder to all of us that we live in a place that has incredible assets. And I know at times we feel like we're trying to solve a lot of issues, but we really are an incredible community here. So Ryan, you're one of the largest, I think third largest?
Third largest.
Let's make sure we get that in there. And most broadly diversified. So when you think about attracting talent, you mentioned that the location is good geographically and for a big city, but how do you all focus on workforce development and retention and recruitment of talent here?
It's actually perfect, and I didn't plan on this being in here, but this graphic that's up on the slide is something that talks about who we are and what we want to be. Our purpose is that we build incredible places where people can live their dreams, and the vision that we have is to be considered the most respected home builder in the country. And to do that means that you've got to do a lot of things right. You've got to take care of your employees, your customers, your shareholders, your trade partners, and you've got to be good to the communities where you live and work. And so that's kind of at the core of who we are as a company. The other thing that we talk a lot about is just the focus on our people. Our people are our number one priority. They're more important than our customers. It is a bit self-serving. If our employees are engaged and happy and motivated by the work, they're going to take care of our customers. And we also talk about this center section in this graphic about the commitment that we make to our employees. And we ask our employees to hold us accountable to that commitment. It's worked out pretty well for us for now the fourth year in a row. We've been recognized by Fortune magazine as one of the top 100 best companies to work for. So it's, I say the awards are nice, but the underlying core values that we have that are part of our belief system, that's what's made It's a really motivating place to work when you're talking about creating and helping folks build their version of the American dream, Katie. But then if you can do it in a place that's got a lot of really nice people that like being with each other, it's a pretty magical formula.
So in other words, culture matters within the four walls of a company, and it helps you retain the best and the brightest. So you touched on the challenges in the housing market right now, just undersupply, large demand. It's going to continue to grow. About 30 years of underbuilding, if I'm correct. Like we haven't kept pace for decades now. So this isn't a problem of new making. And so when you think about the factors shaping the housing landscape here in Metro Atlanta, what do you see as either a positive or perhaps an opportunity or an impediment for you all? And then how are you adapting your strategy to meet that?
So a positive is that this is an economic region that is growing, and it's largely pro-business and pro-growth. So that's the positive. We have a lot of wonderful employers here that are creating great jobs. We have amazing academic institutions that are awarding degrees to some of the best and the brightest in this country. And those kids, by and large, they get a taste of what Atlanta and the Southeast is like, and they want to stay here. And that means that they need a place to live. So those are some of the things that I think are a real positive. In terms of impediments, not too different from a lot of other places. We have aging infrastructure, so roads could be better. We need more water, we need more sewer, we need more firehouses, we need more schoolhouses. Those are some of the things that I think create some of the challenges with, ultimately building more homes.
Right, because a home isn't just a home. You've got to be able to provide those infrastructure and service
And I
requirements.
should, Katie, sorry to interrupt. The other
okay.
thing I would tell you that is the other real challenge is candidly everyone in this room. Everybody talks about wanting more homes until the thing that's going to be developed is next to where you live. And then all of a sudden it's like, well, I like the idea of it. I don't like the implementation of it. And until we grapple with that as a society, we're going to continue to have the issue. I was sharing with Raphael, there are some states that have done some unique things to try and incentivize builder. Florida, Governor DeSantis, they've got a Live Local Act. The governor of Massachusetts, they've got some interesting stick approaches where they've been fairly aggressive in going after municipalities that aren't keeping up with housing. And then my home state of Utah, I grew up in Utah. Governor Cox, who unfortunately got a lot of press the last couple of weeks for different reasons, they have a program called demandmoresupply.org. Demandmoresupply.org. If you're bored tonight, go check it out. But the idea is that they've created a public awareness campaign to say to the parents, if you want your kids and your grandkids to be able to own a home and to stay in Utah, and the social dynamics in Utah is the greatest fear of parents is their kids leaving and taking the grandkids with them. They don't care about their kids, they do care about their grandkids. Well, that'll happen if there's not an affordable place for people to live. So they're kind of bringing it home to, do you want your kids to be able to own a home at some point in time? I hope so, I want mine to. Well, we probably need to be a little bit more open-minded about how we think about growth and planning.
Well, and kind of reversing the psychology there.
Yes.
Which I think is really important. So let's switch for a moment and talk about downtown Atlanta. We have long at the Chamber for about 2 years now talked about how do we re-envision downtown to be more of a neighborhood, and how do you actually get people living in downtown? So how do you all think about transforming, or if this is even an idea for you all, what you would call those urban centers?
So I think we're lucky here in Atlanta. We've got some amazing local Atlanta residents that are putting a lot of time, effort, and money into revitalizing downtown, and I think they're going to do it in a really thoughtful way. It certainly starts with placemaking and creating reasons why people want to be in those locations. Restaurants, bars, neighborhood locations where people can congregate, and that all I think makes a ton of sense. But you've got to have housing to go with it. And if you think about vibrant downtown areas and think of the downtown cities that you visit all over this country or world for that matter, the most vibrant, thriving downtown areas have a mix of both commercial, office, retail, and housing. And anytime those things get out of balance, I think you'll see places struggle. One of the best examples that I'm a huge fan of is downtown Tampa. 15 to 20 years ago, downtown Tampa was not that great of a place to be. There was some revitalization done by one of the big property owners there where they started to revitalize things. They incorporated housing to go with it. And today, downtown Tampa is one of the most vibrant, thriving downtown areas that I've been in a long time. So I think it's possible, but it's going to take all of us leaning in to make the downtown Atlanta the way that I think we want it to be.
And any other urban core, and you can see what Midtown did over the last 40 years, right? People used to not live in Midtown, and now it's just bustling with both business and residents in Midtown. Many of you may or may not have met Jonathan Hunt, who is here with us today. He is the interim GM of MARTA. And so we know that having a world-class transit system is really important to creating spaces for affordable development, transit-oriented development, but also moving people from perhaps where they can live to the jobs where they are. I believe Pulte Group made a decision to locate near transit system. So can you speak to the importance of having a world-class transit system in shaping our future?
It was a very big deal for us. We're in Buckhead. Our office is right at the Buckhead MARTA stop. We're in the Cousins Property buildings. Shout out to the best landlord in town, Cousins Property.
That'll make its way back to
I know,
Colin.
well, yeah, so selfless plug. He just needs to fix my air conditioner. He says I'm behind on rent. And I was like, I'll pay the rent when you fix the AC. So, yeah, but we did choose that building because it was on the MARTA stop, and we've got 450 employees in that building that come from all over town. And we also we have a full Pulte University inside of that building where every one of if you're a new hire in our company, you come here for training. And one of the big things that we wanted is when they land at Hartsfield-Jackson, we wanted them to be able to just get on the MARTA and come to our office. And there's a whole bunch of hotels right there in the area. They never had to rent a car. It was just seamless. And then we got a lot of folks in the corporate office that use the MARTA to go home. They also use the MARTA to go to the airport. So it's a really important part of kind of who we are as a company. And it's a big part of our home building strategy as well. In cities that have vibrant, thriving, well-operated mass transit systems, those are some of the best places for us to build homes, develop properties. Washington, D.C. is a good example of that. I was in a community that we're developing that's 4 6-story condo buildings. That's right in kind of the Tyson's Corner area, right on transit. And it's going to do incredibly well, and a big driver of that is the public transit system.
Right. So in other words, opportunity, and I still believe that opportunity exists here. And so let's revert back to the home building side of things as well. And so when you reflect on the commercial and real estate prices that we're seeing right now, residential and commercial, so how do you as a publicly traded company balance economic growth for the company and affordability issues within the communities?
So we think about affordability at every step of the way, and one of the core tenets of our strategy is to have a very robust entry-level business, a move-up, and then an active adult. So we have made the entry-level price point 40% of our overall business. It's that important. We think about size of the home, the way things are designed, really trying to hit affordability. Ultimately, though, our input costs, land, labor, materials are what they are. And it's one of the reasons that we need to bring on more supply is the lever that will bring down prices is better densification and affordability of land. And that's how you're labor's not going down, materials aren't going down. We definitely don't want our profit to go down. So the lever there is going to be on land.
So I see President Kathy is here. So I think we have time for questions if anyone has one. And while we see if anyone takes the mic, how does tariff impact the equation for home building?
So we've avoided tariffs for the most part. This year there was enough supply in the system that we avoided most of the tariffs. The final numbers are still moving around. We think it'll likely next year add somewhere between $3,000 and $4,000 of additional cost. Our average price point is $575,000. So I don't think another $3,000 or $4,000 is going to be catastrophic for us or for the buyer. But look, it's another $3,000 or $4,000 in cost, and you go back to the first slide that I showed, everything's more expensive. We don't need things being more expensive. We're looking for affordability.
Excellent. Katie.
Brian,
Better make it easy, Katie.
I'll make it easy. Thanks for being here today, and thank you for your leadership in the community as well. You started to mention the design of a home. Can you talk a little bit about how the design and building of a home today is different from perhaps when you started your career or even 20 years ago?
Yeah, so
I'll add a question. Like, what do buyers want today versus what they wanted 20 or 30 years ago?
Yeah, a lot of buyers just want a house. They don't care. They want something that they can afford. But 25 years ago when I started in this business, architects were all-knowing all being all everything. And so whatever an architect drew, that's what you built. And I do really value our talented architectural team, but they don't necessarily know the hearts and minds of a consumer. So we start with architectural designs, and then we've incorporated into our process a consumer validation. So we'll go rent 250,000 square foot warehouses, and we'll take that design that's on paper, which most people can't look at a floor plan and know what ends up, let alone tell you where the bathroom is. But we would go into these warehouses and we would build the house at life scale out of paper and 2x4s and put real furniture in the space. And then we would bring focus groups into those warehouses. We'd walk them through the design, and in 48 hours, you knew exactly whether or not you had a good design or not, and you could rapidly tweak it at a fraction of the cost and the time it would take to go and build that house for real on a lot. And if you make a mistake, you're stuck. So it's things like that, Katie. We've gotten a little better with virtual reality today, where we're actually doing a lot with augmented and virtual reality to do that same kind of testing. But the short answer is we're bringing the consumer in. Some of the most popular things are drop zones, mud rooms, places where all the garbage can go. We're doing a lot with kind of hidden pantries to keep the clutter and the noise out. Dog washes have become a really popular thing. And there's some wasted space in houses where you can add some of these things that are really unique and impactful for consumers.
So Ryan, you have a veterans program. Would you mind explaining that program?
Yeah, I'm glad you asked. So one of the things that we try to do as a company is give back. We've been incredibly blessed. We have a company foundation. We have 3 giving pillars. The first is veterans. I'll come back to that. The second is educating the next generation of home builders. And the third is affordable housing. Our primary pillar is a program called Built to Honor, where we give mortgage-free homes, and I mean mortgage-free, the home is free, to veterans that have served our country and they've come back wounded physically or mentally, or in most cases it's both. 2 weeks ago, we just gave away our 100th mortgage-free home, 100. Right here in Clayton County, down in McDonough, Georgia. Just a wonderful, deserving veteran, Sergeant Aisha Hardiman. I will, as excited as they were, and her family, to get the home. And our team we have our own in-house interior design team. They decorate it, it's furniture, there's plates, knives, forks. I mean, it's done. Including, there was a big green egg on the patio.
Wow.
And Sergeant Hardiman's husband, once he saw that big green egg, I think he forgot that they got a free house. And the only thing that mattered was the Bills because it was opening weekend of the NFL, were the Bills on TV that Sunday, and that big green egg. And he was talking about the barbecue that he was going to put on Sunday. So wow. It's a really neat program, and we do somewhere around 10 homes every year.
That's awesome. Thank you.
Helene?
So I'm going to stay on that vein, but ask you personally. You commented on what a civically minded community we're in. You have lots of opportunities to get involved in the community personally, and there are things you say yes to and things you say no to. How do you make that call?
Yeah, it's tough, Helene, and I wish I could say yes to more. And one of my personality flaws is I just don't like to disappoint people. I'm a bit of a pleaser. And so it's really hard for me to balance kind of the demands of, I've got a family, which is probably my number one most important thing. I've got a big company that I'm trying to oversee, but I'm trying to give back as well. So I allocate a percentage of my time, and I'm now in a place where I've got a rule. If I add something, I got to take something away. The choices that I've made to this point, junior achievement, which is really important to me, the Chamber, Atlantic Committee for Progress, and I just recently went on the Grady Memorial Hospital Board as well. So those are the ones that I'm kind of giving to at this moment in time with my personal time.
Yeah, go ahead, Kevin.
All right. Hey, Ryan, Kevin Greiner. You mentioned you've been fairly insulated with tariffs, but I wonder with immigration restrictions, how that is impacting your business, your subcontractor's business, and what kind of leadership challenges that really presents to you and your team?
So we have had some raids, limited raids on not just our job sites, but our competitors as well. They've been very targeted after specific individuals that I'm assuming had some kind of a criminal record of some sort. For a long time, and I mean decades, we've required, as a matter of our master trade agreement, that if you work for us, we require that you've got a legal right to work in this country. I think we all know we're not perfect, so I'm sure there's things that are on our job site that aren't in compliance with our agreement, but by and large, we ask our trade partners that you've got to certify that your workers have a legal right to work in the United States. The disruption to us, I think, has been minimal, and what I probably worry more about, Kevin, is the disruption to the labor supply as a whole. So, and every one of your businesses in this room are at risk of being impacted as well. So whether it's construction or hospitality or housekeeping or agriculture or manufacturing or distribution or logistics, I mean, you name it. I think if we have less labor in the country, things are inevitably going to get more expensive, and that's what I'm probably most concerned about. Specific to construction, we haven't seen really anything that's been disruptive to this point.
Great. So, did you have another?
I had one last question.
Sure.
So Ryan, is there any truth to the thought process that we lost a lot of small home builders during the Great Recession, and that in some way has also contributed to the housing supply challenges?
Yes and no.
Okay.
It is true that we lost some small home builders, over-levered, just didn't have the wherewithal to sustain some of the housing downturn, and it was difficult to sometimes start over after you've lost everything. And our company lived through that, and we had some really dark days as well. Fortunately, we were able to survive. There is a narrative that is out there in some obscure pockets that say the big home builders are the reason we have a housing shortage. Not true. One of my favorite shows, Mythbusters. I'm going to ask them to take this on. We would gladly build more homes if we could. We control 250,000 lots, so we have plenty of lots that we can build on. We're not interested in building homes that we can't sell. So, we're going through that balancing act, and I think a lot of our competitors are as well. The country needs about 1.5 million new homes a year. Half of those are for sale, half of those are apartments. We've been running somewhere around 1.4 million-ish is kind of what the country's been doing. So we're kind of barely keeping up with kind of current need, but we've got about a 4 million unit deficit from years of underbuilding in the past. And so we've got to chip into that. And the biggest impediment is what I talked about. We just can't get the entitlements and the zoning in order to allow municipalities to build. And another adage that we often say is lots don't vote. Well, what do you mean by that? Your local city councilmen and women, they don't care about the lots that we own because a voter doesn't live there. What they care about is what you have to say. And so when the collective royal we, when we say, I'm pro-development, but not next to me, that's a voter, and that matters to the city council, which is ultimately where zoning policy is enforced.
Right.
Thank you.
Thank you. So Ryan, you had a chance to talk to my nephew at a function, and he told you that you have an employee who loves her job so much she named her dog Pulte. So, yeah. So, thank you very much for being here, Katie, Ryan. We really appreciate it. Ryan, I appreciate the support you have given me from the day I met you, so thank you so very much. So please join us next week. Our speaker will be Clyde Higgs, President and CEO of the Atlanta Beltline. Clyde. October 6th, we have Kevin Greiner, and Katie Sayers, but incoming president.
Yes.
Kevin Greiner. And on October 13th, there is no meeting. We are celebrating Columbus Day. And with that, we are adjourned.